Night had fallen over Helios Tower, the tallest building in the city. The glass walls of the skyscraper shone with golden light, reaching high into the clouds. Inside, workers were leaving after a long day. The offices were silent except for the soft hum of machines. At the very top floor, the CEO's daughter, Lena Voss, stood waiting for the elevator. She was young, smart, and kind, but tonight she was tired. She pressed the button and stepped inside. The doors closed with a quiet ding. The elevator began to move down, then everything changed. A deep rumble echoed through the building. The lights flickered once and then turned red. Alarms screamed through the halls. Smoke began to rise from the lower floors. Somewhere, something had exploded. Inside the elevator, Lena's eyes widened in fear. The lights above her burst, showering sparks. The elevator shook violently and stopped between two floors. Panic hit her chest like a hammer. She pressed the emergency button again and again, but nothing happened. Down below in the maintenance level, Ethan Cole, a tired single father, was finishing his night shift. His hands were rough and scarred from years of hard work. He was the kind of man who never gave up, even when life broke him down. He had one reason to live, his little son Ben, who was waiting for him at home. Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the clock. 5 more minutes, he whispered. He was about to pack his tools when the fire alarm blared. Red lights flashed. A voice shouted through the speakers, "Fire detected on upper floors. Evacuate immediately." Workers began to run for the exits. But Ethan, he didn't move. Something inside him said someone was still up there. He grabbed his heavy wrench and ran toward the stairwell. Thick smoke filled the air. He coughed hard, covering his mouth with a cloth. "Anyone here?" he shouted, but the building answered only with the sound of fire. On the 34th floor, the fire roared like a beast. Flames crawled across the walls, turning everything into ash. Through the smoke, Ethan heard a faint scream. He stopped. That was no random voice. It was a girl. Someone was trapped. He followed the sound, stumbling through smoke and heat until he reached a hallway where the ceiling was already falling apart. At the end stood an elevator door, bent, smoking, and glowing red from the heat. Inside, someone was crying for help. Ethan dropped his bag and ran. "Hey, can you hear me?" he shouted. A weak voice came back, trembling. "Please, I can't breathe." Ethan tried to pry open the elevator door, but it wouldn't move. His gloves burned from the metal's heat. He looked around and found a crowbar on the ground. With all his strength, he jammed it into the small gap and pulled. The metal screamed. His muscles trembled. His skin blistered under the heat. But he didn't stop. "Come on, come on," he growled, pulling again. Finally. The door cracked open just enough for him to see Lena inside, coughing and holding her arm. "I got you," Ethan said. "Hold on tight." He reached in, ignoring the flames licking his sleeves. The heat seared his hands, burning through the fabric. He grabbed Lena and pulled with everything he had. With one last heave, she fell into his arms, just as the elevator cables snapped. There was a deafening boom. As the elevator plunged into fire below, the shockwave threw Ethan and Lena across the hallway. He shielded her body with his own as debris rained down. Minutes later, firefighters burst into the smoke-filled corridor. They found Ethan barely conscious, his arms wrapped protectively around the girl. His hands were burned, skin red and blistered, but he was alive. They carried them both outside. The night sky was filled with orange light from the tower. News drones buzzed around, recording everything. Reporters called him a hero. Social media showed his face everywhere, but Ethan didn't care. As the medics treated his wounds, he looked up weakly at the burning building and whispered, "Is she safe?" The paramedic smiled. "She's alive thanks to you." Ethan closed his eyes, tears mixing with smoke and ash. In his mind, he saw his son Ben's face. "I'll be home soon, buddy," he thought. Later at the hospital, Ethan lay in bed, his hands covered in white bandages. The doctors said he might never feel the same again. But for him, it didn't matter. A life was saved. That was enough. Lena, resting in the next room, wanted to thank him, but Ethan refused interviews and left quietly at dawn. He just wanted to go home to his son. As he stepped out of the hospital, cold morning air touched his face. For a moment, everything was peaceful. Then a black car stopped near him. The window slid down. A man in a dark suit stared at him, silent, cold, serious. "You're Ethan Cole?" the man asked. Ethan nodded slowly. The man gave a small smile. You're exactly what we've been looking for. Before Ethan could answer, the car drove away, leaving him standing there, confused and uneasy. He didn't know it yet, but saving that girl had changed his life forever. 3 days had passed since the fire. The city had already moved on, but Ethan Cole hadn't. His hands were still wrapped in white bandages. He couldn't move his fingers properly. Every time he tried to hold something, pain shot through his arms. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive. But luck didn't pay hospital bills. Ethan sat in a small clinic room staring at the window. Rain slid down the glass like slow tears. He thought of his son Ben waiting at home with the neighbor. Rent was due tomorrow. Medicine bills were stacked on the table. He sighed. A hero, he muttered. Yeah, right. The news had called him the man who ran into fire. They showed his face everywhere. People online wrote comments like real hero, and he saved a life. But no one came to help him now. Then the door opened. A man in a black suit walked in, tall, sharp, and calm. His shoes made no sound on the floor. He looked expensive, like someone who didn't belong in this old clinic. Mr. Cole, the man said with a polite smile, I represent Voss Industries. My name is Agent Kellen. Ethan frowned. Voss, as in Marcus Voss? The CEO? The man nodded once. Yes. His daughter Lena wanted me to thank you in person. She's recovering well. Ethan nodded quietly. Good to hear. Agent Kellen placed a small envelope on the table. The company wishes to express its gratitude. This is a small gift. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a check, more money than he had ever seen. His heart skipped. I can't take this, he said, pushing it back. Kellen smiled again. Mr. Cole, you risked your life for someone you didn't know. You deserve this, and more. Mr. Voss would like to meet you personally. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Meet me? Why? He believes you might be useful. That word, useful, felt strange. Ethan didn't like it. He shook his head. Look, I'm just a maintenance guy. I don't need your fancy offers. I need to heal my hands and get back to work. Kellen adjusted his tie. Think about it. Sometimes heroes are needed for something greater. Then he turned and left, leaving the envelope on the table. Ethan stared at it for a long time. That night, rain poured heavily as he walked home. His small apartment smelled of damp clothes and warm soup. His son Ben ran to him with a big smile. Dad, you're back. Ethan smiled softly, kneeling down despite the pain in his hands. Hey, buddy. I missed you. Ben touched his bandages gently. Does it hurt? Ethan nodded. A little, but I'll be fine. They sat together eating dinner, cheap noodles and a few vegetables. The lights flickered, and for a moment Ethan felt something cold inside him. He couldn't stop thinking about that man, about the strange way he said, heroes are needed for something greater. The next morning, Ethan went to the construction site where he used to work. His boss looked uncomfortable. Ethan, I'm sorry, he said. You can't work with your hands like that. It's too dangerous. Maybe after a few months. Ethan's stomach dropped. Please, I need this job. But the boss just shook his head. He walked out silently, the cold wind biting his face. Everything felt heavy. His hands, his heart, his life. When he got home, Ben was coughing again. The medicine bottles were almost empty. Ethan looked at the check still lying on the table. He had refused it once, but now he sighed. What choice do I have? Later that night, Ethan stood outside the giant glass building of Voss Industries. The logo above the doors glowed like fire. Security cameras followed his every move. As he entered, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The receptionist scanned his ID and led him to a private elevator. The doors closed and the elevator rose smoothly to the top floor. When it opened, Ethan stepped into an office that looked more like a spaceship than a room. White walls, blue lights, and a single huge window showing the city below. At the center stood Marcus Voss, the CEO, tall, silver-haired, eyes cold as ice. Mr. Cole, Voss said, walking forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The man who saved my daughter. You have my respect, Ethan nodded stiffly. You already thanked me. What do you really want? Voss chuckled softly. Straight to the point, good, I like that. Tell me, Mr. Cole, do you believe in destiny? Ethan frowned. No, I believe in hard work. Voss said, walking around him. You ran into a burning building knowing you might die. You didn't hesitate. Most men freeze. But not you. You went without fear. That's rare. Ethan looked uneasy. What are you getting at? Voss stopped and looked him straight in the eyes. I'm offering you a position. Something experimental. You'll be helping us with Project Helios. It could change the future, and yours. Project Helios? Ethan repeated. What's that? Voss smiled thinly. A way to make humanity stronger. Ethan laughed dryly. You're talking to a janitor with burned hands. Voss leaned closer. I'm talking to the man who walked through fire and lived. Silence filled the room. Then Voss placed a sleek silver contract on the table. The paper shimmered faintly with blue light. Sign this and I promise your son will never worry again. Healthcare, education, a home, everything. Ethan stared at the glowing paper. His heart pounded. He thought of Ben's smile, the cough, the empty fridge. He hesitated for a long moment, and then slowly took the pen. As he signed, the letters on the paper glowed and vanished into light. A calm female voice spoke from the walls. Welcome to Project Helios. The room lights dimmed. Ethan looked around, confused. The CEO smiled like a man who had just won something important. Ethan's instincts whispered something isn't right, but it was too late. Outside, lightning flashed over the city. Inside the tower, deep underground, hidden machines began to hum, as if waking up. Ethan Cole had just stepped into a world he could never escape. Ethan woke up in a place that didn't feel real. The air smelled clean, too clean, like metal and ozone. White lights glowed softly above him and the ceiling looked endless. His hands were no longer wrapped in bandages. Instead, strange silver patterns shimmered faintly under his skin, like veins made of light. He tried to sit up, but his muscles felt heavy. A voice spoke beside him, calm, female, and robotic. Good morning, Mr. Cole. Please remain still. Your treatment is in progress. Ethan turned his head. A glass wall surrounded his bed. Beyond it, he could see men and women in white suits moving around computers and screens. The logo Hello's Labs shone on every wall. What is this place? He asked. The voice answered, Welcome to Project Helios, Sector 9. Ethan blinked. His memory was blurry. He remembered signing the glowing contract, then darkness. After that, nothing. Where's my son? He demanded. The voice replied softly, Your family has been compensated and protected. Focus on recovery. Recovery? Ethan looked at his hands again. The faint silver glow pulsed like a heartbeat. What did you do to me? No one answered. A few hours later, 2 people entered his chamber. One was Dr. Harlow, a scientist with kind eyes but a tense smile. The other was a tall security guard wearing black armor and a visor that hid his face. Good to see you awake, Mr. Cole, Dr. Harlow said. How do you feel? Ethan frowned. Like I've been hit by a truck. What's happening to my hands? Harlow tapped on a tablet. Your burns were completely healed using nanotech fusion. Microscopic machines that rebuilt your damaged cells. But, he hesitated. Something unusual happened. Ethan stared. Unusual? Harlow nodded slowly. The nanotech didn't just repair your tissue. It merged with it. What does that mean? The scientist's voice dropped to a whisper. It means your body isn't rejecting the technology. It's adapting. You're stabilizing. Ethan felt cold inside. You're saying I'm becoming one of your experiments. Dr. Harlow looked away. You volunteered, Mr. Cole. Ethan clenched his fists and the silver veins flared with faint light. I didn't volunteer for this. The guard stepped closer, his hand on his weapon. Ethan glared at him, and for a split second the air around his palms shimmered, like heat rising from fire. Dr. Harlow raised his hand quickly. Calm down! The energy is unstable. You could hurt yourself. Ethan took a deep breath and sat back. I want answers now, Harlow sighed. Project Helios is an advanced bioenergy program. We're testing a way to combine human willpower with nanotech energy. Imagine a person who can generate endless power, enough to light a city or stop a machine army. Ethan's voice hardened. So you're turning people into batteries? The doctor didn't reply. Days passed. Ethan wasn't allowed to leave the facility. They called it observation time. He called it a prison. They made him perform strange tests, lifting metal blocks, touching control panels, focusing on holographic screens that measured his brain activity. At first, nothing happened. But slowly his body started to change. When he focused, small sparks appeared around his fingers. When he got angry, the air grew warm. Once, during a stress test, he accidentally melted a steel rod just by holding it. The scientists called it energy manifestation. Ethan called it a curse. At night, he lay on the small bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought of Ben, his son's laugh, his tiny hands. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his boy's face fading into the white lights of the lab. "I did this for you," he whispered to himself. "But what have I become?" One morning, as he was escorted to the training hall, he noticed someone familiar through a glass wall. Lena Voss, the CEO's daughter. She was sitting on a hospital bed surrounded by doctors. Her eyes looked blank, as if she didn't remember anything. Ethan stopped. "Lena!" he shouted, banging on the glass. "It's me, Ethan." The guards pulled him back. "Stay quiet." But Lena turned her head slowly. For a second, her eyes met his, confused, scared, and empty. She didn't seem to know him. Ethan's heart sank. Later that day, Dr. Harlow came again. He looked tired, nervous. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "you should know, Project Helios wasn't built for healing. It was built for control." "What are you talking about?" Ethan demanded. "Voss wants to create soldiers, people who can channel fire, light, and energy through their own bodies. He believes emotions can power machines." Ethan's eyes widened. "He's insane," Harlow nodded sadly. "Maybe, but it's working." "You're the proof." Ethan stood up, then shut it down. "Let me out." The doctor shook his head. "You don't understand. They won't let you go, not after what you've become." Before Ethan could answer, the alarms blared. Red lights filled the room. A mechanical voice shouted, "Subject unstable. Containment breach detected." Harlow looked terrified. "What did you do?" Ethan raised his hands and saw fire flicker along his veins. The heat burned through his shirt, but it didn't hurt. The glass around him began to tremble. "Stop!" Harlow yelled. "You're going to—" The lights exploded. The walls cracked. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping, the fire fading from his hands. He looked up, breathing hard. What's happening to me?" Dr. Harlow whispered. "You're becoming something new." Ethan stared at his glowing hands in silence. The reflection on the glass showed a man who was no longer just human, but something else, something powerful and dangerous. That night, as he lay awake in his room, a soft whisper came from the intercom. "Ethan, don't trust them." It was a girl's voice. Lena's voice. Then the speaker went silent. Ethan sat up, eyes wide. The real nightmare was just beginning. The next morning came with silence. Too much silence. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. The silver veins under his skin were brighter now, moving slowly like rivers of light. Every few seconds they pulsed as if alive. He flexed his fingers, and a faint warmth spread through his palms. The air shimmered slightly. He could feel the power inside him, like a storm waiting to break free. He whispered to himself, "What are you turning me into?" No answer came, only the low hum of machines hidden behind the walls. Later that day, guards escorted him to the training chamber. It was a huge circular room filled with metal panels and glowing sensors. Dr. Harlow waited there, along with 2 other scientists and a small group of armed soldiers. "Morning." "Mr. Cole," Harlow said, forcing a smile. "Today we'll test your energy response." Ethan frowned. "What if I refuse?" The guard beside him raised his weapon slightly. Harlow's smile faded. "Then we'll have to make you cooperate." Ethan clenched his fists. The silver veins glowed brighter. "You don't want to do that," he said quietly. Harlow quickly stepped forward. "Please, let's not fight. Just focus on the test." He pointed toward a large steel block in the center of the room. "Concentrate on it. Think about releasing energy through your hands. Don't force it, just feel it." Ethan hesitated. He didn't trust them, but he wanted to understand what was happening to him. Slowly, he raised his hands toward the block. At first, nothing happened. Then the air began to ripple. Heat waves formed around his fingers. Sparks of orange light flickered. The steel block started to glow. "Good," Harlow said softly. "Now hold it steady." But Ethan couldn't. The power built faster than he could control. The heat grew intense. Fire erupted from his palms, swirling around like liquid flame. The steel block melted within seconds, dripping onto the floor. Alarms blared. The soldiers backed away, shouting. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping. The fire vanished, leaving his hands steaming and the air thick with smoke. He looked at his palms, unburned. Not even a mark. Harlow ran to him. Incredible. You're generating plasma-level heat without damage. Ethan glared at him. I almost burned this place down. You call that incredible? Harlow's voice trembled. You have no idea how powerful you are. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept hearing voices through the vents. Whispers, footsteps, machines humming behind the walls. Then, just before midnight, a faint light blinked from the corner of the room. A small device, and like a communicator, had been slipped under his door. He picked it up carefully. A soft voice came through. Ethan, it's me. He froze. Lena? Yes, she whispered. You need to get out of there. They're lying to you. Where are you? He asked quickly. I'm in Sector 5. They said I lost my memory after the fire, but I didn't. I remember everything. The explosion, the elevator. And you, Ethan's throat tightened. They said you were recovering. They're using me, Lena said. They say my cells reacted to the same nanotech that's inside you. They want to combine our data to create something called the Source. The Source? Ethan repeated. Yes, a living power core. They believe if they connect your energy to my neural pattern, they can control it. Control you. Ethan's pulse quickened. How do I find you? There's a tunnel under the observation deck. I'll leave the door unlocked at midnight tomorrow. But be careful. They're watching everything. Then the line went dead. Ethan sat in the dark, staring at the glowing veins on his hands. Every part of him screamed to escape, but he needed to plan. The next day, Harlow entered again. He looked nervous. Mr. Cole, we're increasing your tests. Why? Ethan asked. The CEO wants results. He believes you're ready for the next phase. Ethan laughed bitterly. Ready? You mean ready to be controlled? Harlow looked away. You don't understand. If you refuse, they'll take your son. Ethan's blood ran cold. What did you say? Harlow swallowed. They've been watching him, Ethan. The company knows where he lives. They said if you cooperate, he stays safe. Rage exploded inside him. Flames burst from his arms and the lights in the room shattered. The guards raised their weapons, but Harlow shouted, Stand down! Ethan's voice thundered. If they touch him, I'll burn this whole place down. The fire around him flared brighter, but then suddenly he stopped. He saw fear in Harlow's eyes. The fire dimmed. He fell to his knees, shaking. I don't want to hurt anyone, he whispered. I just want my son back. Harlow took a deep breath. Then listen to me. I'll help you. But you must leave tonight. Ethan looked up. Why help me? Because you're not a weapon, Harlow said quietly. You're a father, and they've forgotten what that means. That night, the facility lights dimmed. Guards rotated shifts. Cameras blinked off one by one, just for a few seconds. Enough time to move. Ethan slipped out of his room, his hands glowing faintly to light the path. He followed the vents, the silent corridors, until he reached the tunnel Lena had described. The metal door was slightly open. He stepped inside, heart pounding. On the other side, Lena waited, pale, scared, but alive. You came, she whispered. I said I would. For a moment, their eyes met. Two people bound by fire and fate. But before they could move, alarms erupted again. Unauthorized movement detected. Subjects escaping. Lockdown engaged. Lena grabbed his arm. They found us. Ethan turned toward the flashing lights of the corridor. His hands began to burn with fierce orange light. He looked at Lena. Run, I'll handle this, but go! She ran into the shadows as soldiers flooded the hall. Ethan faced them, fire swirling around his arms like a storm. He wasn't just fighting for freedom anymore. He was fighting for his son, and for the first time he wasn't afraid of the fire inside him. Red lights flashed across the walls. Sirens screamed through the underground facility. The smooth, silent lab had turned into a war zone. Ethan ran through the narrow corridor, fire still flickering around his hands. Every step echoed against steel floors. Behind him, guards shouted and metal doors slammed shut. Lena, he called out, I'm here, she yelled back, ducking under a pipe as sparks rained from the ceiling. Her face was pale, her breathing sharp. They're closing the tunnels! Ethan looked ahead, 3 hallways, each glowing with red warning lights. He could hear boots pounding from both sides. They were surrounded. He took a deep breath. "Stay behind me." Lena's voice trembled. "What are you going to do?" Ethan clenched his fists. The silver veins under his skin began to glow brighter, pulsing like molten metal. "Whatever it takes." The first wave of soldiers appeared, armored, faceless, carrying weapons that glowed blue. "Subject 07. One shouted. "Stand down or we open fire." Ethan raised his burning hands. "Go ahead," he growled. They fired. Blue energy bolts shot through the air, but the heat around Ethan flared, forming a glowing shield of fire. The shots vanished inside it, melting mid-air. Then Ethan struck back. He swung his arm forward and a wave of heat exploded down the hall, knocking the soldiers off their feet. Metal warped. Lights burst. The walls glowed red-hot. Lena shielded her face from the blast. When the smoke cleared, the hall was empty. She stared at him, eyes wide. How did you do that?" Ethan looked at his hand, still shaking with power. "I don't know, but I can't stop now." They ran deeper into the facility, passing labs filled with glowing tanks and floating shapes. Inside the tanks, Ethan saw human silhouettes, still silent, surrounded by blue liquid. Lena stopped. "Oh my God. They were experimenting on people." Ethan felt rage rise inside him. "Helios wasn't building heroes," he said. "They were making slaves." A voice echoed from hidden speakers, calm, cold, familiar. "Not slaves, Mr. Cole, weapons." It was Marcus Voss, the CEO. Ethan froze. "Voss," he shouted. "What did you do to these people?" Voss's voice echoed through the hall. "They were failures. But you are the key. The first perfect bond between man and machine." "The Helios flame," Lena shouted. "You lied to us!" "You used us." Voss laughed softly. "You were chosen. Don't you understand? Humanity has limits. But you, Ethan, have none." Ethan clenched his fists, the air around him rippling with heat. "You turned me into a monster." "No," Voss said coldly. "I turned you into the future." The speakers went silent. Lena grabbed Ethan's arm. "We have to go. He's stalling us." They sprinted down another passage. The walls trembled. Security drones dropped from the ceiling, spinning blades glowing red. Ethan blasted the first drone apart with a burst of flame. Another one swooped toward Lena, firing small darts. She screamed as one grazed her shoulder. Ethan caught the drone midair, crushing it in his burning hands. "Stay close." He carried her as they reached a large chamber with an elevator at the far end. The control panel glowed red. Lockdown mode. "Can you hack it?" he asked. Lena nodded weakly. "I can try, but it'll take a minute." "You've got 30 seconds, Ethan said, turning toward the door. Guards were already approaching from both corridors. Heavy footsteps. Shouts, weapons charging. Ethan's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed to protect Lena. Flames rose around him again, brighter and wilder than before. He whispered, "Please, don't fail me now." The fire exploded outward, filling the chamber like a storm. The guards stumbled, blinded by light. When the smoke cleared, the floor was scorched. The walls half melted, and Ethan stood in the center, breathing hard. His eyes glowing like burning metal. Lena stared at him in shock. "Ethan, your eyes." He turned toward her, his voice low. "Open the door." She pressed the final key and the elevator came to life with a loud hum. They stepped inside. The doors closed and the lift began to rise. For a moment there was silence, broken only by their heavy breathing. Lena looked at him carefully. "You saved me again." Ethan shook his head. "No, I started this. I signed that contract. I walked right into their trap. But you didn't know," she said softly. "You did it for your son." He looked down, his expression filled with guilt. "I wanted a better life for him. Instead, I turned myself into this." Lena reached out and touched his hand. "You're still human, Ethan. You saved people. You saved me. Don't forget that." He didn't answer. The elevator stopped suddenly with a violent jolt. The lights flickered, then went out. "Oh no," Lena whispered. A red emergency light came on. The control screen displayed 2 words that froze Ethan's blood. "Remote override." The doors opened slowly, revealing a tall figure standing in front of them. It was Marcus Voss. He looked calm, almost amused. "You've done well, Mr. Cole. I had to see it for myself, the living fire." Ethan stepped out, fists glowing. "End of the line, Voss." Voss shook his head. "You don't understand. The power in you isn't yours. It belongs to Helios. Ethan's anger flared. Try taking it then. Voss smiled faintly. Gladly. He pressed a device on his wrist. Suddenly, Ethan's body convulsed. The veins of light under his skin turned crimson. Pain tore through him. Lena screamed. Stop it, you're killing him. Voss watched calmly. Not killing, awakening. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping as the energy surged uncontrollably. The ground around him cracked. Flames burst from the floor. With every heartbeat, the fire grew stronger, too strong. Lena ran to him, grabbing his arm. Fight it, Ethan. You can control it. Ethan forced his eyes open. Through the pain, he saw her face, scared, desperate. And something inside him snapped. He let out a roar that shook the entire chamber. The flames erupted outward, engulfing everything in a blinding wave of light. Voss was thrown back as the walls shattered. The fire vanished as quickly as it came. Smoke filled the room. Ethan collapsed, barely breathing. His skin steamed, his heartbeat weak. Lena knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. You're okay. You're okay. But Ethan didn't move. His last words before passing out were a whisper, broken and full of pain. Get to my son. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything was quiet. No alarms. No fire, just silence. He lay on a cold floor, staring up at a cracked ceiling. His vision was blurry, his body weak. The faint glow under his skin had faded. Now only faint silver veins pulsed softly in his arms. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. Then he saw her. Lena sat beside him, wrapping his hands with torn fabric. Her face was streaked with dust, her eyes red from crying. You're awake, she whispered. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Where are we? Old warehouse, she said. I dragged you out after the explosion. We're miles from the facility. No one's found us yet. Ethan slowly sat up, wincing. Voss? Lena shook her head. He survived, but the lab's destroyed. He'll rebuild, and he'll come for you. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we finish it before he does. She handed him a small metal drive, cracked, scorched from the fire. I stole this from the lab, Lena said. It's the core data of Project Helios. You need to see it. Ethan inserted it into a broken tablet they'd found. The screen flickered, showing old files, medical notes, test results, and videos. In one video, a younger Marcus Voss stood in front of a whiteboard covered in equations. His voice was calm, confident. Energy is emotion, he said. Anger, fear, hope, human will is the strongest fuel. If we can capture it, we can power the world forever. Lena looked at Ethan, horrified. He wanted to turn feelings into fuel. Ethan scrolled further. Another video played. It showed a small boy in a hospital bed, pale, weak, connected to machines. The caption read, Subject 0, Ethan Cole. Ethan froze. His heartbeat stopped for a second. He whispered, That's me. The footage showed a younger Ethan, maybe 10 years old, crying as scientists injected glowing liquid into his arm. His skin lit up just like it did now. Lena covered her mouth. Oh my God, you were their first experiment. Ethan's eyes filled with shock and rage. All these years? They said my parents died in an accident. I grew up thinking I was lucky to survive. He stared at the screen, trembling. They made me. I was part of Helios before I even knew what it was. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. Ethan, listen. That's why Voss wanted you back. You were the original test and the one that worked. Ethan's voice cracked. They used me as a kid. And now they want my son? She nodded. Voss wants to finish what he started. He believes your son carries the same DNA pattern. He's sending agents to find him. Ethan stood up, his eyes burning with fury. Then I'm going home. Lena grabbed his arm. Wait, your powers aren't stable. Every time you use them, your body burns more energy. If it keeps going, it could kill you. Ethan shook his head. I don't care. I'll burn the whole city if I have to. Lena stared at him. That's exactly what Voss wants. He wants you to lose control. He wants the fire to consume you. Ethan stopped. The words hit him like a cold blade. He sat down again, breathing heavily. Then tell me how to stop it. Lena opened another file from the drive. There's a failsafe. Dr. Harlow designed it. A reversal code. It can shut down the nanotech, cut the energy flow, and make you human again. Ethan looked up. So why didn't he use it? Because it destroys the host, she said quietly. You'd lose everything, even your life. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked at his glowing hands. If that's the price to keep Ben safe, then maybe it's worth it. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You can't talk like that. We'll find another way. He smiled sadly. There's always another way, until there isn't. Outside, thunder rolled across the night sky. The city glowed in the distance, tall, bright, and alive. Ethan stood at the window watching lightning flicker across the skyline. Lena joined him. What now? He didn't turn around. Voss will send his men for Ben. I have to reach him first. But I can't fight alone. She nodded. Then we fight together. Ethan looked at her. The girl he once saved from the fire, now the only person he trusted. Why are you helping me?
He asked softly. Lena smiled weakly.
Because you didn't give up on me when everyone else ran. Maybe it's time I do the same for you. For the first time in days, Ethan felt something like hope. But hope didn't last long. A faint buzzing sound filled the air. Lena frowned. What's that? Ethan's eyes widened. He recognized it instantly. The sound of Helios drones. The windows shattered as small metal machines burst inside, firing electric darts. Ethan grabbed Lena and rolled behind a pillar. He shouted, They found us! One dart hit his shoulder. Sparks crackled. Pain tore through his nerves. He groaned, his hands glowing with uncontrolled fire. The flames burst out, melting 2 drones instantly. Lena crawled toward the door. We have to move. Ethan staggered to his feet, blasting another drone apart. But more kept coming, faster, deadlier. He grabbed Lena's hand. Run! They burst through the warehouse door into the rainy night. Lightning flashed above them. The rain hissed as it hit the fire still glowing on Ethan's arms. In the distance, a black Helios aircraft descended, its searchlight sweeping across the street. Lena turned to him. They're not stopping. Ethan looked up, drenched, furious, ready to fight. No, he said. But neither am I. He spread his hands wide. The flames roared to life, brighter than ever. Golden, fierce, alive. The aircraft engines screamed as his fire hit them head-on. The explosion lit the night like a second sun. Lena shielded her eyes, shouting his name. Ethan! When the smoke cleared, the aircraft was gone. The sky burned orange from the flames. Ethan stood in the center of the street, chest rising and falling, his eyes glowing like molten metal. He whispered to himself, voice trembling. If this is what I am, then I'll use it to end him. The city was burning again. Not from fire, but from fear. Helios security drones filled the skies like metal vultures. Sirens wailed across the skyline. Somewhere above, on the roof of Helios Tower, a storm was gathering. A storm Ethan Cole was walking straight into. Rain poured down his face as he moved through the streets, his coat torn, his hands glowing faintly under the water. Every step left steam rising from the ground. He could feel it, the energy inside him growing wild, unstable. His body ached, every heartbeat pulsing with heat. The nanotech was reaching its limit, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somewhere inside that tower, Marcus Voss held his son. Inside the tower, the power flickered as lightning hit the rooftop spire. In the control room, Voss stood before a massive screen showing Ethan's approach. Subject 0 is on his way, a technician warned. He's burning through everything in his path. Voss smiled calmly. Good, let him come. The Helios flame must reach full ignition before the final transfer. He turned to a smaller monitor where a boy sat inside a glass chamber. Scared, crying softly. Don't worry, Ben, Voss said coldly. Your father will join you soon. Together you'll light a new world. On the lower floors, Lena fought her way through security, determined to reach Ethan. She carried the data drive tight in her hand, the reversal code Dr. Harlow had created. She whispered to herself, Please be alive, Ethan. Hold on. Ethan entered the tower through the shattered lobby. The air smelled of smoke and oil. Guards rushed at him shouting orders. He raised one hand wherein fire erupted like a wave, rolling across the marble floor, melting metal and glass. The flames no longer hurt him. They obeyed him. He stepped through the smoke, eyes glowing bright gold. Where's my son? No one answered. By the time he reached the top floor, the storm had grown violent. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, lighting the entire room in white and blue. Voss stood waiting beside a large glass chamber where Ben sat, eyes wide. "Dad!" the boy cried. Ethan's heart cracked. "Ben!" He took a step forward and covered him, but Voss raised a small controller. "Another step," Voss warned, "and I release the failsafe. This whole building will go up." Ethan's voice was low, steady. "You're insane." Voss smiled faintly. "No, I'm enlightened. Look around you, Ethan. Cities crumble, people fight, the world starves. But with your power, I can end all that. Unlimited energy. Eternal light. You call this light?" Ethan said. "It's darkness, Voss. You're using people as fuel." "Humanity is weak," Voss replied coldly. "It needs fire to evolve." Ethan's hands flared with light. "Then let's evolve," he charged. Voss pressed the controller. The lights exploded. Power surged through the tower. Ethan's body convulsed as energy waves struck him, forcing him to his knees. The nanotech inside him burned like liquid fire. Voss laughed. "You can't fight it. You are Helios now." Through the pain, Ethan heard a voice, low, soft, distant. "Ethan, don't give up, Lena." She burst through the side door, bleeding, holding the data drive. "I have the reversal code," she shouted. Voss turned, startled. "No," Ethan forced himself to stand. "Do it," he yelled. Lena plugged the drive into the central console. The screen flashed red, warning alarms screaming, "System overload, reverse sequence initiated." Voss ran toward her, but Ethan caught him by the throat. Flames roaring around them. Voss gasped, struggling. "You'll kill us both." Ethan's voice was calm, almost peaceful. Maybe that's the point. The fire grew brighter, filling the room like a sun. The glass shattered, rain pouring in from the storm outside. Lena shielded Ben behind a console as the heat rose. Ethan looked at his son one last time. "Ben, listen to me." The boy sobbed. "Dad, don't go." Ethan smiled weakly. "You're stronger than me. Be the light, not the fire." Then he turned back to Voss, who screamed as the flames consumed everything. The tower shook violently. Light burst through every window, and then silence. When the dust settled, the once mighty Helios Tower was gone. Only a smoking crater remained, glowing faintly in the rain. Days later, rescue teams searched the ruins. Among the debris, they found 2 survivors, Lena and a young boy. Lena sat by Ben's side, her hand on his shoulder. He stared quietly at the crater where his father had stood. "Will he come back?" Ben asked softly. Lena didn't answer. She looked toward the smoke and whispered, "He never left." Months passed. The city rebuilt. People whispered about the Helios incident, a mysterious explosion that shut down every drone, every lab, every weapon Helios ever built. Some said it was sabotage. Others said it was a miracle, but those who were there, they knew the truth. One evening, Lena and Ben visited a quiet hill overlooking the rebuilt city. The sunset painted the sky in red and gold. Ben placed a small toy, a burned wrench, the one his father once used, on a stone. "Goodbye, Dad," he said softly. Lena smiled faintly. "He'd be proud of you." As they turned to leave, a soft breeze blew across the grass. The toy wrench began to glow, faint orange and warm. Ben stopped, eyes wide. "Lena, do you see that?" She turned, her breath catching. The glow flickered like a tiny flame, and in that glow, for a split second, a shadow stood. Tall, calm, watching them, Ethan Cole. Then the wind carried the light away into the sky, disappearing among the stars.